Americans continue to mourn the loss of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, only the second woman ever to serve on the Supreme Court. Ginsburg was a pioneering advocate and champion for women's rights, earning late-in-life stardom as a feminist icon. But a piece for the Washington Post argues her dreams were not fully realized. Author and lawyer Linda Hirshman wrote the article entitled "Ruth Bader Ginsburg Had a Vision for America." Her colleagues thwarted it, and she joins us now. Linda, thank you so much for being here. You say that Justice Ginsburg left the world as a icon of the feminist movement. You say that I want to make sure I get your words here. You say that Justice Ginsburg died hoping for a liberal Supreme Court majority that never materialized. Expand on that.
Right. So, people are asking all the time now whether she should have retired in the years when the Democrats controlled the Senate. And the answer is that if a Democrat had won the election of 2016 in the Electoral College, they would have filled the fifth seat with a liberal, and that would have made Ginsburg the most senior justice in the liberal majority, which is as close as you can get to being the Chief Justice of the United States without actually being Chief Justice. So I think she died, in that thwarted hope that she would have, and at that point she was just hanging on until the next election. But I think the reason that she waited until 2016 was that she hoped at last she would be able to make her vision a reality on the Supreme Court.
So I mentioned the book that you wrote, Sisters-in-Law, how Sandra Day O'Connor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg went to the Supreme Court and changed the world. And you dive into the lives of the first and the second woman to serve on the nation's highest court and their fight for legal equality. Describe the relationship between these two historic women and walk us through some of the rights women have today because of Justice Ginsburg.
They had an alliance. It's very old-fashioned beliefs about women that we can only be friends and run out at lunchtime to buy shoes together. But that's really wrong. And the relationship between O'Connor and Ginsburg reflects a much more fruitful possibility. They each benefited from the other one's success. And they also were both extremely good at managing their relationships. So they made an alliance, and it was a warm and fruitful alliance. Sandra was very senior. So before she retired, in conference, the justices speak by order of Chief Justice first and then by order of seniority. So O'Connor would have spoken and articulated usually a pro-woman stance before Ginsburg had to say a word. And Ginsburg, in her gentle and very clever way, kept trying to bring O'Connor further to the left on issues regarding feminism. We have actually material in the archives that reflect that. So it was an alliance.
One of the things that I've spoken to a number of people in my own reporting in the wake of the passing of Justice Ginsburg about this, that always struck me about her was the fact that she never shied away from who she was. In other words, her upbringing in Depression-era Brooklyn, the loss of her mother at a young age, the struggles and the challenges that she as a woman and all women in this country faced, the fact that she was a minority, a Jew, played such a large role in defining who she was. And there are a lot of people who make it to the top of the ladder in their chosen field, and they generally distance themselves. They become they imagine that they have to become the person that everyone wants them to be. And she never ran away from all those things that made her her. What do you credit that to?
She had the most powerful inner voice. I spent years writing about her and about O'Connor, so I feel like I really know them in a unique way. And, she would like sit in those long silences and people would think that she had finished speaking and they would interrupt her. And actually, she was listening to her inner voice. And that inner voice reminded her of her history. When I went to her grammar school in Brooklyn to just get a feeling for her upbringing, the people there remembered when she had gone back to visit her old high school and her old grammar school. She was very rooted. And this makes her so important because people always ask, what difference does it make that there's a woman on the Supreme Court of the United States? Don't all wise justices decide the same way, right? They say that. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg's embrace of who she was, including that she was a woman and a female all her life, gave her a different perspective that she brought to the Supreme Court that someone who hadn't had the life of a female would never have had. And there's a classic example of that in the decision making. There was the case, Reading against the Stafford School District, that involved a young girl, 13, 14 years old, and they had basically searched her looking for drugs, and she sued. And when they were arguing the case about Savannah Reading, the male justices were yucking it up about how funny it was that you had to go around high school in your underwear, like in the locker room and stuff. And Ginsburg not only scolded them during the oral argument, but she called USA Today and gave an interview for the media about how important it was for the men on that court to understand the experience of growing up female.
So in one of I did an interview this weekend with a young 11-year-old girl who had a superhero day at school when she was 8 years old. And instead of dressing up like, Wonder Woman or Moana or, a Disney character, she went as RBG. And she had read a book of her as a little girl, a children's biography of Justice Ginsburg. And I just thought to myself, she is inspiring young people and people who are older, but especially she seemed to have a lot of young people had sort of embraced who she was as a dissenter. But in all of the laudatory articles and interviews that are being done in the wake of her passing, I want to ask you about a point that you made in your piece, why she didn't choose to step down when President Obama had the power to replace her, or why she didn't retire. There have been many justices who have retired, like Justice O'Connor and others. And I just wondered, and somebody I interviewed this weekend said that that was probably a miscalculation. I mean, she was allowed one or two. Would you agree that that was a miscalculation or not?
Well, hindsight is always 50-50, right?
True.
So 2020, not 50-50.
Yeah.
There was about a 50-50 chance that she would win that bet because the election of 2016 was that close. So I don't want to criticize her for not having perfect foresight. I do believe that the America got much more politically polarized in the years after 2008 than she recognized, and that the cost of her gamble not to step down before the Republicans took the Senate in 2014 was much higher than she might have realized. I think if she had seen the extreme polarization coming, then she might have been smarter about it. On the other hand, you can't have the fate of the Republic resting on the perfect judgment of one very smart, very far-sighted person. The American politics has moved radically away from the moral position Ruth Bader Ginsburg represents. And we all have a piece of that, including the young people who didn't vote in 2016. And I am hoping that they will be inspired to vote this year. The 18 to 24-year-olds have the lowest voting percentage of any portion of the population. And I'm hoping it won't be just bobble-headed Ruth Bader Ginsburg dolls and ruffled collars, but the ballot box that will inspire them.
It's an excellent point that you make, Linda, and that's what my source said as well. She probably, Justice Ginsburg probably could not have imagined this presidency and the things that have transpired as a result of it, and that's perhaps why that calculation didn't come into play when she perhaps had the opportunity to do so. Linda, thank you so much.
I'm sorry. That's
go ahead.
why we should not take her advice about what to do next. We are living in 2020, and it is really important that we recognize the extreme moral and political situation that we're in now, and which her lost opportunity to execute her vision represents, and deal with the reality as it now exists and not some vision of the past.
Linda Hirshman, thank you very much. This was great. Appreciate it.